Okay, so if we look at this function, so what they're saying here is if height, so first of all, you have a struct that takes in two different parameters, and if one changes, I mean, originally it was just height in centimeters, inches. That was what they gave us, and then through the init process, you do a conversion where if you get the one that's height in inches, then you convert it to centimeters.
I'm so sorry.
And then
I'm so sorry.
What?
I was listening, but I just got up and was trying to take an M&M in my cat's mouth. So if you could start taking.
Oh no.
If you could start that over. I was just.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. He just.
Okay. He couldn't control himself.
No, and I ate it out of his mouth.
Okay.
So he ate it. So okay.
Oh, that's good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So originally I had was just this height in inches as of type double, and a variable called height in centimeters called double. And what they told us to do, they wanted it to make so that if height changes in inches, that we also change it in centimeters. So, so in the example, you set height in centimeters to be 70, and then you you enter in height in inches, and you to see if it changes. And so you're saying that when you did this code, it still works for him. Is that right?
Yeah, but I might have put something slightly different at the bottom. I might have been telling it to print, you know what I mean, in centimeters or inches. So like with the didSet there, does that mean like basically it's printing automatically by itself then? Like if it's in centimeters, it's going to automatically print it in inches too? Is that?
No. No, the way it works is you tell it what you want to print. So, are you put the print functionality in the didSet function?
No, I did. Function? I guess I did it at I think I did it at the very end, like where it's already at, but I just put, I don't even remember, I'd have to look at it, but I think I was just basically saying, you know, like I had the computed functionality in there where, you know, height in centimeters divided by 4, whatever. So it's still printing the right numbers, but I just wasn't sure what the difference was between, like, for example, you know, because it's telling it to like.
Right, but if you change something, it doesn't know to redo it because you're not passing in anything. So what I'm trying to do here is do a little test to see if it also will run the same for me. So I just took out all of the didSet functionality, and I just left the height in inches and the height in meters the same. And so you can see these results right here are, it's 195 is basically, because we originally set height in centimeters to be 70, and then we changed height in inches, and now we're printing height in centimeters. And so let's see what happens when I run this. Okay, so see, without the didSet functionality, the height in centimeters doesn't change because all we did was set the height in inches. You
Okay.
see that? And so what happened here is that the didSet functionality is important because when you declare the variable and you call, it looks like something like this. So it goes var new height equals height. And then it gives you the option to call height in centimeters or height in inches. And then when you call that function, height in centimeters, it'll set the height in inch, right? You see that?
Okay, so basically it's doing like the opposite. Like if you say height in centimeters, then it's printing it in inches with the didSet.
It's not printing. It's not printing. It's just setting it.
Okay.
And but down here I print it. But the function itself, the init function itself, is only setting it. And so does that make sense?
Kind of. So like basically, is it because it's taking this instance, right? It printed 70. And is that because it's not like the didSet's supposed to take the old value? And so in this case, it's skipping the old value, which is
Right.
75.
Yeah, and that's because when you call a function, because basically, and the init is a function. It's an init function, and so because you see it's got the curly braces, all this work that's being done, right? And so when you call it, when you originally call it, and you type in new height equals, and then you go height, and then you call it. As soon as you type this value in, and it executes, this new height goes in here, and it goes to, it says, okay, so they're passing in this height in centimeters. So I just got height in centimeters. So now I'm going to set the height in centimeters to this, and I'm going to set the height in inches to this calculated value. But then when you change it, and so you call this function height, and you say height dot height in inches equals 75. All it's doing is it's adjusting this right here. And so it's not, there's no reason for it to check to see if it needs to do anything. Whereas if you use this variable definition where you're actually when you're actually calling the didSet function, basically. So when you say height in inches equals 75, it goes in here, it goes height in inches 75, and it says, oh, there's a function here. I have to execute this. Oh, it's a did function. So now I'm gonna check and let the this variable, I'm gonna declare a constant equal to that height in inches that I just got passed in times 2.54. And then if the height in centimeters that I currently have doesn't equal this, then I'm going to set it. And then now when we execute, it actually goes through and, come on, honey, you can do it. And it sets, and so it has set the new height in centimeters value.
Okay.
So basically, you're calling a function when you have didSet function in the variable declaration. So this is a variable declaration, and this is a function within here that, yeah, you called it the right thing. I always forget what the name of it is.
Is it a property observer or something? Is that what?
It's a property observer, right? Property observer. So this is a function that's declared in the Swift programming language just for this purpose.
Okay, so basically rather than without it, you would have to like literally pretty much create a new variable and go into the structure rather than it kind of like a mutating function, like it's always kind of updating the old value or the last value. Is that kind of?
No, a mutating function is different because a mutating function just allows you to go in and change, do an execution, do a change. So it's let's see. Why do you think it's like a mutating function?
Well, and I'm not totally understanding exactly what you're saying, but I just because it seems it's like with the didSet function in there, if you put like dot, see how you have like height in inches equals 75, like it seems like keep putting that in, just that, and it would keep changing. Like if you change the number 75, it would keep changing the output. But that's why the didSet, is that why that we have a didSet function? So you could just keep doing, dot height in inches or height in centimeters, and you're just updating that number, having to create like a new variable new height equals.
Oh, I think I understand what you're saying. Here, just a second. Let me. So
Okay.
if I leave this alone, so let me comment this out again. Okay, so now if we run this program and we run it, so now it's going to say height in centimeters 70. But if we say height in inches, print that, I'm sorry, print height in inches, it's going to print the right value because we changed the, see, oh wait, oh yeah, so let's not do this height in centimeters. Okay, so then run this again. So basically we changed height in, it was 75. So let's do that print statement here. So I'm going to copy the print statement. So you see here, because when we did this variable declaration of height equals the struct height, with passing in height in centimeters of 70, then I print the height in inches, and you see it's 27.55, so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is because when we passed in height in centimeters, it called this and divided height in centimeters by 0.54. Mm-hmm. So this value is 75 divided by 2.54, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and so then we called this function and said height in inches equals 75. So now it's going in and it's saying, oh, okay, so I have this instance of the height structure called height. And I know, right, that height in inches is 27.559, et cetera. But now I'm going to change it to height in inches equals 75. And so it's going to go up here and it's going to say, okay, this variable, I'm going to change that variable to 75 inches. And now you can see that it knows it's 75 inches. But it did not go through the process of changing the value in centimeters. So if you want to know the value in centimeters, it's going to tell you the wrong value. It's going to tell you the old centimeters of 70. But if you use the property observer, instead of going straight to setting this and then thinking it's done. So basically, you're changing this property value, and the instance variable thinks, okay, I'm done. I just changed the height in inches. I'm happy, I'm done. But then if you query the height in centimeters, it's going to be the wrong value because it didn't go through the process of updating the value.
Okay, yeah, so like when it tries to calculate that in centimeters using the 75 or whatever, it's using like an older value, 70, right?
Yeah, it's using this value because it's not been asked to calculate.
Okay.
Because again, what you're doing when you say height in inches equals 70 is you're basically just adding this parameter inside the variable of height and just straight out changing it. You know, it's like you're just straight out changing it, and so there's no reason. Here it goes, okay, but if you have it going here and it says height in inches, and it sets to height in inches, and then it goes, oh, I'm supposed to do something here. What am I supposed to do? Oh, I'm supposed to do it. And so now I'll actually do a calculation, and then it resets the value height in centimeters to a different value. So then you get this watching functionality, this observer functionality. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it does, because you're not just literally updating the variable itself within it, but it's basically like if we had the didSet function back in it and you did a print statement for inches or whatever, and then, okay, right after height in centimeters, like it would adjust it based on what you put in inches. Like it's just updating the computation, right?
Yeah, but it's not. But it's doing a different computation because it's going in through the didSet functionality, even though it's the same math. It's not doing it down here in the declaration. It's doing it up here when you try and reset the parameter value. So now it sets it, and it's the correct value. So you're right. It goes. I mean, when you say print in inches, what we did, if we just wanted to check to see if it actually changes to 75, then it would be the same. But if we check to see, well, did it fix the centimeters part, we would find out that it didn't. It did because of the did. So it's actually going through extra processing than it did down here in the initialization.
Okay, so it's taking that 75, right, from height in inches equals 75. It's basically when you put print height in centimeters, it's taking into account that it's 75. It's not the previous, literally the previous height in centimeters, which was declared 70.
Right, and you know why?
I'm not going to go as far to say I know. I'm going to understand why. I think it's just because it's it's, I mean, when I looked up didSet, those property observers, willSet and it was talking about how it's taking like an old value or the last, it's basically taking the last value. In this case, that would be 75, not 70.
Right.
So I mean,
yeah, but it's running it through this particular calculation.
okay. So what, like, why do you need
And
initializers with it? Like the initial set function, you know what I mean?
oh, because this is a property observer. So when you call the function, I mean, when you create an instance, you're creating an instance of a struct. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've created this struct called height in inches. No, I'm sorry, it's called height with an uppercase H.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just a blueprint for a thing that you. So then you create an instance of that struct, and when you create it, it causes you to decide which initialization you're going to use, right?
Okay.
So as soon, like I said, as soon as you type in like new height, if I and I put an open paren, it'll automatically give me the option to set it as height in centimeters or height in inches, right? And whichever force the initialization to go through one of these.
Okay, so like.
So if I choose height in.
Okay,
What?
so basically when you're creating the initializations are a part of that, not so much function, the didSet function. Like if you want to do a variable and set a specific, value to it, that's why you're using the initializations. But the didSet function, if you didn't create a new variable, you're just saying, okay, you can go in the struct itself as height, create the height variable.
Yeah, and yeah, so but the height is an instance of a struct. So basically, what you have here is you're getting stuff that's in it.
Mm-hmm.
So like if we go back some of these earlier examples, like this one. Okay, so this is struct and running workout. And so distance is a parameter within this struct. Time is a parameter. Elevation is a parameter. When I type in, I create an instance of that running workout. I put in my open paren. Okay, so when you create this instance, you have to tell it stuff, right? Because these are, whenever you create, you have to, you have access to all of these different parameters of the struct. So then, when I print out the post-workout, and when I access this function and just go my new workout. So basically, if I say like my new work, I see dot, I've got, okay, so there's a distance parameter, a time parameter, an elevation parameter, and a function I can access. You can see it's a function because it starts with void and has the open paren, close paren. So every time you create an instance, you have all these parts with it. And that's different than normal variables where, if I just create a, a var, my var, equals hello, then that's a very simple variable, right? All it is it just uses up a tiny bit of space in the computer. And so that's just a simple variable declaration. But when you actually create this struct and you create an instance of the struct, then you get all this stuff with it. So with this one, it's no different. But you just have two things. You have the height in inches and the height in centimeters, but you've complicated things because you want it to compute both different types of units. So, some people use centimeters, some people use inches. So let's handle that. Instead of making the person calculate that, let's handle that in the program, because computers are good at calculating. But the problem is, because the way the init works, it is only accessed for declaration. So basically, we are declaring, I'm declaring a variable called height that is an instance of the struct called height. And I'm going to pass in the number of centimeters to it. And so as soon as I do that, it goes, oh, okay, so you just created this struct, and I know it has a height in centimeters and a height in inches, but I don't really need to use the didSet because it's the initial declaration. So I'm just going to go down here and do the initialization. And then I'm going to do, initialization. See, I've got this, it's a function really. I have to do both of these things. So I'm going to do those things, I'm going to have a result that's dot height in centimeters. And then when you change it, it calls a whole different thing, change it. So basically, we're just accessing one of the parameters, and we're changing the value. And then when you try and change it, it goes, oh, I have to do this, and I'll do that stuff for you. And now you can access the centimeters, and it's going to be correct.
Yeah, I don't know. I totally got, like, on page 6, that example. But I think sometimes, and I don't know if I'm getting confused with the fact that there's multiple ways to do things, because, like, instead of the initial, you could probably just create a function, right? Like, I mean, I think I'm getting a little confused as to what I think it kind of helps with what you're saying, but I think it's still a little, because it's typed in, for example, you have a variable, height in inches and height in centimeters. So like if you just typed in print and then in parentheses, height in inches dot, or height in inches and then dot, like a number or whatever, would it do the didSet function? Or
No, there's no dot. I mean, basically what you have, the height in inches can only be accessed through the instance variable name. So that's why you have to say height, which is the instance variable. You say height dot height in inches, and then you can access it. And then if you try and print height in inches, you're going to get the right value because you just set it that way. But you can't really use a function, because when you're setting a parameter value, which is what this is, and it looks more familiar when it looks like this, but it's a parameter value inside the struct. When you're setting that, you're not calling a function. All you're doing is, hey, the height changed of this thing, like let's say you're keeping track of your son's height. And so now I want to know, well, what is it in centimeters? Because his aunt is in England and she doesn't think about inches, so I've got to convert it for her. So let's just get the computer to convert it. And so then the didSet function sets that up for you, and then you can, you can email this value, which is the new value.
So is it kind of like basically, rather than, changing the entire variable itself, by didSet, you're creating an instance of it, you can kind of customize that particular instance, I guess. Is that without changing the entire variable within the structure? Is that, I don't.
You lost me when you talked about during the declaration access.
Honestly, I don't even know how to ask exactly what I'm confused on, but I'll just try to read up on it some more, see a whole lot of examples, and like I was trying to research it. I mean, I don't know. It just was talking about that it's attached to old values, and it works with the willSet property observer, but I don't know. I think I'm still getting a little confused as to how these are really different from functions themselves, I guess.
Oh, well, if it was a function, usually functions, you try and, one thing you could do is you could eliminate the didSet functionality, and then you could have a function that said, convert to centimeters, convert to inches. But then you'd have to go through two steps. So let's say we created a function that was inside here, where we would say function convert to centimeters, and then we'd just say, height in inches, height in centimeters equals height in inches times 2.54. So then what we'd have to do is we'd have to say height in inches equals 75. But then we'd have to call height dot convert to centimeter.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could say, well, probably what we'd have to return. And then we could access the returned value, but it would be separate. Oh, here, I got to say this. And then you'd have to return. Okay. Then you'd have to return. You'd have to do another step. So so there is this other way to do it, but then the user would have to know that they then have to call this function within the instance variable. And that's extra work. So the didSet functionality is just a handy tool to make it so that you don't have to pay attention to calling a separate function.
Okay, I think that makes, because rather than creating two functions, converting to centimeters and converting to inches, the didSet function is kind of doing both in one.
Yeah, because what happens is as soon as you set height in inches, you can, there's an automatic calculation that happens because it calls this function. I mean, as soon as you set it, the program will not allow you to set height in inches without also setting height in centimeters. Whereas we just use these things, then the height in inches is set, but height in centimeters is not updated.
Okay, I don't know. I think at the very bottom after the initializers, I think it's a little confusing seeing all the different like print and height dot, like I think it's helping explain it. I can tell it's totally clicking exactly like with what I just can tell I'm not totally getting it. Like I wouldn't know when to use that going forward, you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't know what the purpose of that would be to like put code, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, well, that gave a good example, a couple of good examples. One was the odometer reading. So like if an app was trying to keep track of how many miles you were going, like let's say your app accesses Google, keeps track of how many miles you drove.
Mm-hmm.
And it has, and it's trying to let you know these businesses where they track that you can report it at the end of the year. And so what they do is they will watch what Google says is how many miles you drove, and then they'll go in and they'll update, and they also make a kilometer reference in case, because they need to use the same app regardless of what country you're in. And so then they will automatically update the kilometer reference as well as the odometer reference.
Yeah, I thought those examples with the odometer had the willSet function with it. And that made, if it's the one I'm thinking of, that example made sense because it was willSet, basically it was odometers ago. And that, made sense. And then didSet, the way that example looked, if it's the one I'm thinking of, I thought that one looked like it made sense because willSet, okay, it's going to take the first value, the new value, I guess, or it's updating the new value. So it was 0. And then the didSet function was attached to the old value and then whatever it needs to add to that. I don't know. I'd have to look back at the example, but I remember that odometer one making more sense. I don't know, for whatever reason when they're like in this didSet,
oh yeah,
it's by itself. Kind of like, I mean,
right,
I think that makes sense, but if you put print, I don't know how to.
Yeah, I think it probably has to do. I'm looking over at the example. Actually, was talking about a step counter. It's easier to think about because it's just
Okay.
And so, what I would recommend is you can put this into your own code, into a playground.
Mm-hmm.
You can just copy and paste this in there, and then you can see how this works. And you could.
I thought, see, like this example makes total sense to me. Like,
okay.
didSet together. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like you're going to start at 0. You haven't taken any steps. And then willSet, okay, print statement to whatever, it's going to print the new, whatever the new value is. And then didSet, if your total steps are greater than the previous old value, then you're going to make a print statement that you added X amount of steps or whatever, which I don't know. I thought one made more sense, but I think it's because they're using the word old value and new value. And when I was reading up on property observers, like, I don't know, that example made sense because I guess it's like a old value and new value wording with it. So I don't know why that function on the previous one, which I guess you wouldn't have to specify that it's an old value because you don't have a new value, you don't have a willSet, but I don't I don't know. I can just tell it's not totally clicking. So I'll have to look at that, and we don't have to like get into it too much, but like also page 9, like the static variables, a little weird, like current user dot dot user equals user, and then that one was pretty weird. But I think
Oh, I didn't get there.
I think I'll just have to like look at more examples of the didSet function.
Yeah,
But
okay.
it is,
Okay, and also,
like that explanation does help more than before, but I'm still not totally, I think it's just because
yeah,
functions better. So like, I just have to get, I don't know, used to the other stuff.
well, I'm recording this, so I'll publish my YouTube channel and make it available so you can look at it again when you maybe spend a little bit more time. Sometimes the idea will sink into you, you know, for you. And this one, so the static. Oh, see, a static variable really that will never change. Although, why don't they make it a constant?
Yeah, like, I don't know why you would, which I guess, to me it sounded like, okay, static variable saying it's literally always going to start 100, but that doesn't necessarily mean the variable can't change. The beginning will always be the same. I don't, but
no, I think this is boiling point is never is what they're saying. So yeah, the way they're explaining this, I can see more complicated.
well, and it was like,
Let me see if I can find something on static properties somewhere else, send it to you. Because this doesn't look like a very definition to me.
yeah, and even on you know, exercise, like I was looking at the answer, and I was relatively close with like some of it, but it just is pretty, I think it was confusing that it, you know, exactly that little section right there. Okay, station, which I don't know, static function. I don't totally understand what put static in front of it, but user and user. So the user struct, user is the variable equals you. Okay, so current user equals your. I don't know. It just like was really confusing to me a little bit.
Yeah, I can see how. Yeah, they're not spending much time on it, and then they're giving you an assignment. So let me see if I can find anything that helps explain the static property more.
Okay.
And with the other piece,
Said there were more examples later on, anyways, like for future sections. So, for, you know, each page. So like that's what I mean.
Yeah.
9, 10 was, you know, but I think it sounded like they might go over that more later, but
Right.
I mean, overall, I do exercises because like practice and see the teacher's guide, you know.
Yeah. I wonder what, if we looked up,
I thought it said something like functions or like very do a type or something. It's, yeah, use variable that you want attached to a class rather than an object. Allows for attaching variables to instances of a class. But I don't, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like something that is never going to change, and you want to be able to access it for convenience purposes because it's related, but it's not really thing that's unique associated with that particular instance.
Okay. Yeah, I don't. I'm sure, you know, as time goes on, as I see more examples, I'm sure it'll sink in, but.
Well, here's an interesting thing. Hacking with Swift is an interesting place to go. Ah, here we go. Okay, so introduction to Swift static properties and methods. Okay, well, this might be a good thing to look at. Let me just chat.
I'm sorry if anyone else doesn't want to going over all this. We can answer other questions too. Like, I feel like I just wasted a lot of everyone's time trying.
No, it's not a waste. I'm sure anyone who has these kinds of questions. So, but see the chat window, Felicia?
Yeah, let me pull it up. And actually, I'm pretty.
So click on this.
I saw that while I was Googling just, you know, didSet property observer static var. So I saw it up so I can watch. Yeah, I go.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and that one.
Okay. I have
Okay, well, great question.
Easy question for you. In general, for the class, if we're, because that really helps, because then I can, you know, Google, oh, what does this mean? And try to kind of let it sink in a little bit more.
Right,
yeah. Like a certain time frame, we absolutely have to finish everything? Or is it kind of like, you know, if people want to go a little slower and we're just kind of taking more time to like understand it, I just wasn't sure of the timing of the class, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's completely flexible, whatever we do, because if we were to go through the book and not use the entire book, which is what a lot of the Inspire folks are doing, it would take them a year and a half to get through it at least.
Well, I'll be honest.
And so we're yeah.
I mean, I'm not in a hurry. I would be fine with that timeline or whatever timeline, because I don't mind going and reading through, you know, section 1 or 2, especially 2, like the functions, and because I thought that the explanations and examples really helpful for students. But I know that, like you're saying, it'll take, you know, a lot more time. But I mean, I just wasn't sure if it was like how flexible it was, because I feel like with 10, like I could listen, probably try to do it, but I feel like I'm totally not quite like at the point to that, because even, you know, pages 8, 9, and 10 were like, you know, I'm not totally getting all of that. It's slowly sinking in, but it's just super slow. I feel like I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually not using 8, 9, and 10 in the section 10 of the Udemy class. Even using that, kind of engaging a whole set of things because you're working with the development environment.
Gotcha.
So it's a little different.
Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, I tried this book by itself, And I just felt like it was way too much information and not enough kind of practical usage like we're getting with the Udemy. And so, I mean, we're really learning how to create apps in the Udemy class, which is a lot funner, I think, than just working in the playground and learning how to write code. Because some of this stuff you don't even have, I mean, just getting an introduction to it is useful, but you know, it's almost like if that kind of stuff could be good because it's hard to know and actually start developing apps on your own what you need, you know, but you need to know what the setup you have access to. And so it's useful, both of them are useful, and I'm glad that we're figuring out how, but
Yeah.
I think it's okay to not completely get some of this stuff. Very eager to find out what you think after you watch the videos for section 10 and see if you get more of a sense that works, because there's a potential for understanding what she's trying to go through based on what she's already taught us. So hopefully that'll make some sense. Once you get through that, I'm eager to hear what you think.
Okay. Sweet. Sorry to take up everybody.
What do you think, Callista? Do you think this is interesting, or where are you at?
I think it's good.
Yeah, it's kind of, you haven't seen any of this stuff yet, so these are problems for you.
Yeah, some of them. Some of them I've seen in
Yeah,
other.
I haven't really seen the observer properties before. That was a new thing for me in this language. So, yeah, and also Swift is different than a lot of programming languages because you to put functions in this, and most programming languages don't let you do that. So that's kind of different.
It allows you to do what?
It allows to put functions within the structure.
Oh, okay.
And most programming languages don't require, they only allow you to put functions in class. I think it's different. So we'll be moving on to that as soon as we get done with the structs part. And then trying to understand, you know, then we'll have the difference between classes, when you use class and when you use a struct.
Okay.
But those are very similar. So, and that's something you might be more in the classes.
Is a class just like when you have multiple structs, it's easier to put them together rather than, or no?
No, it's pretty much, it's very, very similar to a struct, but it's passed around in the computer different. So in the computer, when you pass around a struct, you pass around often in the struct. In a class, you can pass around pointers. So I'll get more into that as we when we start approaching that.
Yeah, I should probably just focus on, you know, simple things before I try to ask. That sounds good.
Yeah, I know it's always funny to me whenever I start a class. I think I told you this before, but I always love the textbook and looking at all the stuff and thinking, I don't know what any of this means. No, when I'm done with this class, I'll understand it. So you go through this process of not knowing, and then you eventually know. So it's learning is such a fun process.
I'm getting it a little bit more. When I'm not, I get a little frustrated, but that's, yeah, you know, I'm not going to quit.
Oh, good. Okay.
So yes, no, it's cool. It's interesting. I really, yeah, no, I appreciate all your help. I feel really, really good with the combination of exercises mixed with the teacher's guide and student's guide, and then the Udemy stuff for like practical application mixed with some of your videos that kind of show maybe how you're going about it or your thought process through it. I feel like it's a good combination of things right now, so that's awesome.
Cool. Okay, well, good. So we'll hopefully close their final and get all aces, and
Hopefully.
that'll be good. Okay, well, we'll
Thank
see you guys
you.
later. Thanks a lot for your time.
Yep.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.